and welcome back to Dragon Age Origins. In this video, I will be going over the different codex that we have been stockpiling, and I hope you enjoy. I will stumble throughout the video, there's a lot of interesting words, but let's get right into it. Archdemon. In darkness eternal, they searched for those who had goaded on them, until they found their prize, their god, their betrayer, the sleeping dragon Dumont. Their taint twisted even the false god, and the whisperer awoke at last in pain and horror, and led them to wreak havoc upon all the nations of the world. The first blight. Therodice 8-7. The false dragon gods of the Tevinter Imperium lie buried within the earth, where they have been imprisoned since the Maker cast them down. No one knows what it is that drives the Darkspawn in their relentless search for their sleeping old gods. Perhaps it is instinct, as moths will fly into the torch flames. Perhaps there is some remnants of desire for the vengeance upon the ones who goaded the Magisteers to assault the heaven. Whatever the reason, when the Darkspawn find one of these ancient dragons, it is immediately affected by the taint. It awakens, twisted and corrupted, and leads the Darkspawn in a full-scale invasion of the land, a blight. Deepstalker. A fool trusts his eyes, a wise man fears every rock, is a Deepstalker. Dwarven saying. Possibly the strangest of all creatures found in the deep roads is the Deepstalker. Hazapam, as the dwarves call them, hunt in packs, generally by burrowing underground and then striking when the prey is in the mist. Stalkers come in several types. Spitters have venomous glands and can spit secretion that slows or injures their prey. Jumpers hurl themselves at their targets, knocking them down and making the kill easier. The most common variant scares its prey, leaving the unfortunate victim helpless against the rest of the pack. Genlock. These are the most common Darkspawn in the underground. Stalky and tough, Genlocks are notoriously difficult to kill, even by magic. Hurlock. Taller than their Genlock cousins, the Hurlock are roughly of human size, but are possessed of considerable strength and constitution. The shock troop of the Darkspawn, a single berserking Hurlock can often be a match for numerous opponents at once. They are known to adore themselves with roughly carved tattoos to keep track of their kills and deeds, though it is unknown whether or not there is a uniform standard to these markings. Alphas. The Alpha Hurlocks are more intelligent and more skilled fighters, often serving as commanders or even generals. Emissaries. Hurlock emissaries have also been known to appear during a blight. These Darkspawns are the only ones recorded as being capable of human speech and are capable of employing magic. Malbari Warhounds. Dogs are an essential part of Ferelden culture, and no dog is more prized than the Malbari. The dog is as old as myth, said to have been bred from wolves who served Bane, prized for their intelligence and loyalty. These dogs are more than mere weapons or statue symbols. The hounds choose their masters and pair with them for life. To be the master of a Malbari anywhere in Ferelden is to be recognized instantly as a person of worth. The Malbari are as an essential part of Ferelden military strategy. Trained hounds can easily pull knights from horseback and break line of pikemen, and the sight and sound of a wave of war dogs howling and snarling has been known to cause panic amongst even the most hardened infiltrary soldiers. Rage Demon. Encountered in the Fade, the true form of a Rage Demon is a frightening sight, a thing of pure fire, its body seemingly made of amorphous lava, and its eyes two pinpricks of baleful light radiating from its core. The abilities of such a demon center on the fire it generates. It burns those who come near, and the most powerful of its kind are able to lash with bolts of fire and even firestorms. that can affect entire areas. Fortunately, even powerful rage demons are less intelligent than most other variants. Their tactics are simple. Attack an enemy on sight with as much force as possible until it perishes. Some rage demons carry over their heat-based ability onto possessed hosts, but otherwise the true form is mostly seen outside of the Fade when it is specifically summoned by a mage to do his bidding. Sloth Demon. And I looked at the creature, and it had become me, a veritable copy of my form, of my very mind. Stared back at me as if from within a mirror. I thought surely this was a trick, an illusion meant to put me off guard. But as I engaged the thing with my sword, it fought me, with maneuvers that I recognized. It parried as I parried, it swung as I swung, it spoke to me and said things that only I could know. I think this demon of sloth has no form or identity of its own. It is envy as much as sloth. I believe, and mine was not the first shape it stole that day. An excerpt from a transcription deposition of Tyrannus, Templar commander of Cumberland 390 Towers. The most difficult assumption for some who study demons to overcome is the notion that a sloth demon is in and of itself slothful. If that were so, it seems highly unlikely that any such demon would cross the veil into our own world, or once here would fight to possess any creature with a will of its own. And we know both of these things to not be the case. Certainly, some demons are lazy and complacent, but who knows, perhaps these creatures even cultivate such a reputation. The truth is that the demons of sloth are named so because this is the portion of the human psyche that they feed upon: doubt, empathy, entropy. They seek to spread these things. The sloth demon hides in its form, a master of shapes and disguises, always in the last place you look, and from its hiding place it spreads its influence. A community affected by a demon of sloth could soon become a dilapidated pit where injustices are allowed to pass without comment, and none of the residents could be aware that such a change had even taken place. The sloth demon wakens, attires, tears at the edges of consciousness, and would much rather render its victims helpless than engage in a true conflict. Such creatures are best faced only with a great deal of will, and only with an eye to piercing their many disguises. Giant Spider. Giant spiders tend to appear in old ruins and other places where the veil becomes thin because of magical disturbance, or a great number of deaths. In such places, spirits and demons pass into the world of the living and attempt to take control over living beings, spiders amongst them. Not all scholars accept this explanation for the presence of these beasts. However, some claim that the thinning veil allows magic to leak from the Fade, tainting such creatures as these spiders to transform into larger and more potent creatures than they ever would become naturally. While such spiders are known to possess powerful poisons and the ability to fling their webs at opponents in combat, studies of them have been few and full range of their ability are unknown. Wisp. A great deal is made of the most powerful demons that create abominations and those that have changed the history of Thedas. It is often forgotten that not all demons are such awe-inspiring beings. Some that break through the cracks in the veil into our world are known as wisps, a sliver of a thought that once was. A wisp is a demon that has lost its power. Either it has existed in our world for too long without finding a true host, or it has been destroyed, often, so we've found, by other demons. What remains of its mind cling tightly to the one concept that created it, a hatred of all living things. While its abilities to target a living creature is limited, these wisps often mindlessly attack when encountered in the Fade. In the living world, they often have been known to maliciously lure the living into dangerous areas, being mistaken for lanterns or other civilized lighting source. This does, however, seem to be the very limit of their cunning. From the journal of a former senior enchanter, Malice, one of the Circle of Ravini, declared apostate in 920 Dragon Age. Wolf. It is rather unfair the reputation that the wolf possesses in Ferelden. For a people that so clearly adore their hounds, Ferelden simultaneously harbor a distrust of wolves that border on the unreasonable. Unreasonable, that is, if one were not familiar with the ancient legends regarding werewolves. There was a time in Ferelden's past when demons inhabited the bodies of wolves in great numbers, causing the war against the wolves and spreading great fear and panic. The werewolves were slain, but even today, the noble wolf is still looked upon with distrust. From Legends of Ferelden by Mother Alias of Durin 910 Dragon. An attack by a wolf upon civilized folk happens rarely. Often only in times of desperation, and even then only when the wolves have the advantage of numbers. This can change during a blight. When the darkspawn rise onto the surface, their presence dramatically alters the savage nature of normal beasts. In blights past, as the corruption of the darkspawn spread through the wilder areas of Thedas, it would affect the animals found there, and the more powerful of them would survive and be transformed into more vicious and dangerous beasts. A blight wolf is one such example, mad with the pain of its infection, and only through the overriding command of the darkspawn does it still retain some semblance of its packed instincts. Blight wolf are always found in large groups and will tend to overwhelm a single target if they can, using their numbers to their advantage. It is fortunate that the creatures rarely survive their corruption for very long. The Aeonar. When the Imperium occupied the area that is present-day Ferelden, they had two sides dedicated to magical experimentation at extreme ends of the Imperial Highway. The southern one was the fortress of Ostagar, which looked out over the Kakari Wilds. The northern one was Aeonar, although the exact location is now a secret known only to a handful of Templars. Whatever it was the Tevinter were trying to discover at Aeonar, their work was never completed. The fortress was overrun by disciples of Andreas. Upon hearing the news of her death, according to the legend, it was a massacre eerily silent, for the invaders caught the mages while all but one were in the Fade. The site was left structurally sound, but spiritually damaged. Possibly because of this, the Chantry chose to put it to use as a prison. Accused, malfacurant, and apostates are held in the confines of Aeonar. Those who have a powerful connection to the Fade, and particularly to demons, will inevitably attract something across the veil, making the guilty somewhat easier to tell from the innocent. From Of Fire's Circles and Templars, A History of Magic in the Chantry, by Sister Pritine, Chantry Scholar. The Fraternities of Enchanters. Another aspect of circle life is the fraternity. When a mage becomes an enchanter, he may align himself with a fraternity. There are cliques that cross circle boundaries, mages of common interests and goals who band together to ensure that their voice is heard within the College of Magi in Cumberland. The largest fraternities currently are the Loyalists, who advocate loyalty and obedience to the Chantry, the Aquatarians, who advocate temperance and follow a distinct code of conduct which they believe all mages should hold themselves to. The Libertarians, a growing fraternity, publicly maintaining a greater power for the Circle, but secretly advocating to completely split from the Chantry. A dangerous opinion, naturally. The Isolists, a small group of advocates withdrawing to remote territories in order to avoid conflict with the general populace. The Luciferians, who maintain that the Circle must do what is profitable first and foremost. They prioritize the accumulation of wealth, with the gain of political influence a close second. So far, an alliance between the Loyalists and Aquitarians has prevented the Libertarians from gaining much headway. But there are signs that the Aquitarians may be throwing their support in with the Libertarians. If that happens, many mages predict it will come to civil war amongst the Circle. From the Circle of Magi, a history by First Enchanter Joseph R. The Fade. The study of the Fade is as old as humankind. For as long as men have dreamed, we have walked its twisted paths, sometimes catching a glimpse of the city at its heart, always as close as our own thoughts, but impossibly separated from our own world. The Tevinter Imperium once spent vast fortunes of gold, lyrium, and human slaves in an effort to map the terrain of the Fade. An ultimately futile endeavor, although portions of it belonging to powerful spirits. All of the Fade is in constant flux. The Imperium succeeded in finding the disparate and ever-shifting realm of a dozen demon lords, as well as categorizing a few hundred types of spirits before they were forced to abandon the project. The relationship of dreamers to the Fade is complex. Even when entering the Fade through the use of lyrium, mortals are not able to control or affect it. The spirits who dwell there, however, can, and as the Chantry teaches us, the great flaw of the spirit is that they neither have imagination nor ambition. They create what they see through their sleeping visitors, building elaborate copies of our cities, people, and events, which, like the reflection in a mirror, ultimately lack context or life of their own. Even the most powerful demons merely plagiarize the worst thoughts and fears of mortals, and build their realms with no other ambition than to taste life. From Tranquility and the Role of the Fade in Human Culture by First Enchanter Joseph R. The Harrowing. Among apprentices of the Circle, nothing is regarded with more fear than the harrowing. Little is known about this rite of passage, and that alone would be cause for dread. But it is well understood that only the apprentice who pass this trial are ever seen again. They return as full members of the Circle of Magi. Of those who fail, nothing is known. Perhaps they have been sent away in disgrace. Perhaps they are killed on the spot. I heard one patently ridiculous rumor amongst the Circle at Ravini, which claimed that failed apprentices were transformed into pigs, fattened up, and served at dinner to the senior enchanters. But I could find no evidence that the Ravini Circle ate any particular quantity of pork. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travel of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Givinti. Lyrium. More than half the wealth of Ozmar comes from a single extremely rare substance, lyrium. The Chantry believes it to be the water of the Fade, mentioned in the Centrial of Therendice, the very stuff of creation itself, from whence the Maker fashioned the world. Only a handful of mining caste families hazard extracting the ore, finding veins in the stone quite literally by ear. For in its raw form, lyrium sings, and the discerning can hear the sound even through solid rock. Even though dwarves have a natural resistance, raw lyrium is dangerous for all but the most experienced of the mining caste to handle. Even for dwarves, exposure to the unprocessed mineral can cause deafness or memory loss. For humans and elves, direct contact with lyrium ore produces nausea, blistering skin, and dementia. Mages cannot even approach unprocessed lyrium. Doing so is inevitably fatal. Despite its dangers, lyrium is the single most valuable mineral currently known. In the Tevinter Imperium, it has been known to command a higher price than diamond. The dwarves sell very little of the processed mineral to the surface, giving the greater portion of what they mine to their own smiths, who use it in forging all truly superior dwarven weapon and armor. What processed lyrium is sold on the surface goes only to the chantry, who strictly control the substance. For the chantry, it is dispensed both to the Templars, who make use of it in tracking and fighting Malferim, and to the Circle. In the hands of the Circle, lyrium reaches its fullest potential. Therefore, merry craftsmen transform it into an array of useful items, from the practical, such as a magical hardened stone for construction, to the legendary silver armor of King Callahan. When mixed into liquid and ingested, lyrium allows mages to enter the Fade fully aware, unlike all others who reach it only while dreaming. Such potions can also be used to aid in casting of especially taxing spells for a short time, granting a mage far greater power than he normally wields. Lyrium has its costs, however. Prolonged use becomes addictive, the craving unbearable. Over time, Templars grow disoriented, incapable of distinguishing memory from the present or dream from waking. They frequently become paranoid as their worst memories and nightmares haunt their waking hours. Mages have additionally been known to suffer physical mutations. The Magister Lords of the Tevinter Imperium were widely reputed to have been so affected by their years of lyrium use that they could not be recognized by their own kin, nor even as creatures that had once been human. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Da Vinci. The Four Schools of Magic. Entropy. To you, my second born, I grant this gift. In your heart shall burn an unquenchable flame, all-consuming and never satisfied. Therondice 5:7. The second of the two schools of matter. Entropy is the opposite force of creation. For this reason, it is often called the school of negation. Nothing lives without death. Time inevitably brings an end to all things in the material world, and yet, in this ending, is the seed of a beginning. A river may flood its banks, causing havoc, but bring new life to its floodplain. The fire that burns a forest ushers in new growth, and so it is with entrophic magic that we manipulate the force of erosion, decay, and destruction to create anew. From the Four Schools, a treatise by First Enchantive Josephus. The Tranquil. Although apprentices do not know the nature of the harrowing, all of them understand its consequences. They either pass and become a full mage, or they are never seen again. Those who fear to undertake the rite of passage, or those who are deemed too weak or unstable, are given the rite of tranquility instead. The actual procedure, like the harrowing, is secret, but the results are just as well known. The rite severs the connection to the Fade. The tranquil, therefore, do not dream. This removes the greatest danger that threatens a weak or unprepared mage, the potential to attract demons across the veil. But this is the least of the tranquil's effect, for the absence of dreaming brings with it the end of all magical abilities as well as all emotions. The tranquil, ironically, resemble sleepwalkers, never entirely awake nor asleep. They are still part of our circle, however, and some might say they are the most crucial part. They have incredible power of concentration, for it is simply impossible to distract a tranquil mage, and this makes them capable of becoming craftsmen of such skill that they rival even the adeptness of dwarves. The Formari, the branch of the circle devoted to item enchantment, is made up exclusively of tranquil, and is the source of all the wealth that sustains our towers. From On Tranquility and the Role of the Fade in Human Society by first enchanter Josephus. Ostagar, representing the furthest point of encroachment by the ancient Tevinter Imperium into the barbarian lands of the southeast. The fortress of Ostagar was once one of the most important defense holdings south of the Waking Sea. It stood at the edge of the Kakari wilds, watching for any signs of invasion by the barbarians known today as the Chazand Wilders. Straddling a narrow pass in the hills, the fortress needed to be bypassed to reach the fertile lowlands to the north, and provided to be extremely difficult for the Wilders to attack because of its naturally defensible position. Like most imperial holdings in the south, Ostagar was abandoned after Tevinter's collapse during the First Blight. It was successfully sacked by the Chazand Wilders, and then, as the Chazand threat dwindled following the creation of modern Ferelden nations, fell to ruin completely. It has remained unmanned for 4 centuries, though most of the walls still stand, as does the tall tower of Ashal, named after the great Archon that ordered its construction. Ostagar remains a testament to the magical power of the Imperium that created it. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Patrine, Chantry Scholar. The Tevinter Imperium. The Imperium is little more than a dilapidated old slattern, crouching in the far north of Thedas, drunkenly cursing at passerbyers to recall her faded beauty. One can see that Mithras was once the center of the world. The vestiges of her power and artistry yet stand, but they are buried in the layers of filth that the Imperium's decadence has accumulated over the ages. The Magicry live in elegant stone towers, literally elevated above the stretch of the slaves and peasants below. The outskirts of Mithras are awash in a sea of refuges turned destitute by the never-ending war between the Imperium and the Canari. And yet the Imperium survives. Whether with a sword or magic, Tevinter remains a force to be reckoned with. Mithras has been besieged by men, by Canari, by Andraste herself, and never fallen. From In the Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travel of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Dinabiti. The Grey Wardens. The First Blight had already raged for 90 years. The world was in chaos. A god had risen, twisted, and corrupted. The remaining gods of Tevinter were silent, withdrawn. What writing we have recovered from these times is filled with despair, for everyone believed, from the greatest archons to the lowest slaves, that the world was coming to an end. At Wisehap Fortress in the desolate Anderfels, a meeting transpired. Soldiers of the Imperium, seasoned veterans, who had known nothing their entire lifetime except hopeless war, came together. When they left Wisehap, they had renounced their oath to the Imperium. They were soldiers no longer. They were the Grey Wardens. The Grey Wardens began an aggressive campaign against the Blight, striking back against the Darkspawn, reclaiming land given up for loss. The Blight was far from over, but their victories brought notice, and soon they received aid from every nation in Thedas. They grew in numbers as well as reputation. Finally, in the year 992 of the Tevinter Imperium, upon the Silent Plains, they met the archdemon Dumont in battle. A third of all the armies of northern Thedas were lost to the fighting, but Dumont fell, and the Darkspawn fell back underground. Even that was not the end. The Imperium once revered 7 gods: Dumont, Zakikil, Top, Androla, Razikale, Lusikin, and Uthramil. 4 have risen as archdemons. The Grey Wardens have kept watch through the ages, well aware that peace is fleeting, and that their war continues until the last of the dragon gods is gone. From Ferelden Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. The Kakari Wilds. It is said that in the midst of the Black Age, when werewolves stalked the land of Ferelden, in numbers that kept every farmholder indoors and a hound on every doorstep, a powerful Arl of Mari peoples stood and declared that he would put an end to the threat. His Arling stood on the border of the Dark Forest and on the southern border of Ferelden Valley, and he claimed that the werewolves used the forest to launch their midnight assault on humanity. For 20 years, this Arl led an army of warriors and hounds deep into the forest. In his hunt for the werewolves, he slew not only every wolf he came upon, but also every member of the Chazan Wilder folk. Any one of them, he said, could harbor a demon inside and thus be a werewolf in disguise. For 20 years, the forest rang with screams and the river ran red. The tales say that an old Chazan woman found her sons all dead at the Arl's blade. She pulled one of those blades from one son's heart and plunged it into her own chest, cursing the Arl's name as she did so. Where her blood touched the ground, a mist began to rise. It spread and spread until it was everywhere in the forest. The Arl's army became lost, and it is said that they died there. Others say that they still wander. The ruins of his Arl stand this day, filled with the ghosts of women waiting eternally for their husbands to return. The forest of the legend is, of course, the Kakari Wilds. There are many legends about the great southern forest, as there are shadows, or so the saying goes. The Chazan Wilder folk have made their home there since mankind first came to their lands, and the wildlands spread as far into the south as anyone has ventured. Beyond the mists are vast tracts of snow, white-capped mountains, and entire fields of ice. It is a land too cold for mankind to survive, yet the Chazan eke out an existence even there, and they tell of horror beyond the wilds that the lowland folk could not begin to comprehend. To the most, Ferelden simply ends with the Kakari Wilds. There is nothing beyond. The wilds is a land of great trees, wet marshes, and dangerous monsters. What more need be said? From Land of the Wilders, by Mother Alias, Chantry Scholar, 918 Dragon. Darkspawn. Those who had sought to claim heaven by violence destroyed it. What was gold and pure turned black. Those who had once been mage lords, the brightest of their age, were no longer men, but monsters. Therendice 12:1. Sin was the midwife that ushered the Darkspawn into this world. The Magisteers fell from the Golden City, and their fate encompassed all our worlds, for they were not alone. No one knows where the Darkspawn come from, a dark mockery of men. In the darkest places they thrive, growing in numbers as a plague of locusts will. In raids they will often take captive, dragging their victims alive into the deep roads, but most evidence suggests that these are eaten. Like spiders, it seems Darkspawn prefer their food still breathing. Perhaps they are simply spawned by the darkness. Certainly, we know that evil has no trouble perpetrating itself. The last blade was in the Age of the Towers, striking once again at the heart of Tevinter. spreading south into Orlais and east into the Free Marches. The plague spread as far as Ferelden, but the withering and twisting of the land stopped well beyond our borders. Here, darkspawn have never been more than the stuff of legends. In the northern lands, however, particularly Tevinter and the Anderfels say that darkspawn haunt the hinterlands, preying on outlanding farmers and isolated villages. A constant threat. From Ferelden Folklore and History by Sister Petrine, Chantry Scholar. Alistair. You know, one good thing about the Blight is how it brings people together. Alistair was a novice Templar when Duncan recruited him into the Grey Wardens, or rescued him, as Alistair would say. King Caelan Theron. I'd hoped for a war like in the tales, a king riding with the fabled Grey Wardens against a tainted god. Son of the legendary King Merric Theron, Caelan was the first Ferelden king born into the land, free from foreign rule in 2 generations. Since his father's death, he's held the throne alongside his queen, Honora. Duncan. Men and women from every race, warriors and mages, barbarians and kings, the Grey Wardens sacrificed everything to stem the tide of darkness, and prevailed. Like many others, Duncan gave up his family name when he joined the rank of the Grey Wardens, a symbolic gesture of cutting ties. He might say this was a convenience in his case. However, his mother was from the Anderfels, his father from Tevinter. His childhood was spent in the Free Marches and Orlais. His people were everywhere, and his homeland was nowhere. He was given the almost impossible task of leading the Wardens in Ferelden, a kingdom that had thrown the Order out 200 years earlier. Facing local suspicion and hostility, he set about finding recruits. Knight Commander Gregor. Your magic is a gift, but it's also a curse. The Circle of Magi has trained you, and we, Templars of the Chantry, stand vigil to ensure that training is adequate. Grim and Taciturn, Gregor has been Knight Commander of the Templar forces stationed at the Circle Tower for so many years that hardly anyone except the First Enchanter recalls that he is not simply part of the tower itself. First Enchanter Irving. If you want to survive, you must learn the rules and realize that sometimes sacrifices are necessary. There is no higher office in a Circle Tower than that of First Enchanter. The one who holds the title must not only be an able administrator, but also a mentor, leader, and surrogate parent to all the mages of the tower. Irving has proved himself to be all of these things, with an added dose of cunning. Most apprentices know that little goes on in the tower that Irving does not know. He can soothe Templar anger by some childish magical prank at the same time that he lauds the prankster, and everyone walks away satisfied. Logain Mactyr. It takes more than legends to win a battle. Logain was born a farmer during a time where his country was under foreign occupation. When he was still a boy, he joined the Resistance, where his considerable tactical genius quickly became apparent. He became close friends with the Prince Merric, the last true heir of the Ferelden throne, and together they led the rebellion to drive out the forces of the Elysian Empire. Merric raised his friend to the nobility, and Logain is now more of a symbol than a man. He represents the Ferelden idea of hard work and independence. Morrigan. Witches of the Wild. Such idle fancies, those legends. Have you no mind of your own? Of herself, Morrigan says little. She does not deny being a witch of the wilds, but beyond that, everything about her is in question. The Legend of Luthien Dwarfson. At an early age, Luthien was smaller than most children of the Almari. At the age of 12, Luthien saved Tutha, the son of the tribal chief, from his own dog. The dog had gone rabid, and when it attacked Tutha, Lucius slew it with his bare hands. Tutha's father, Mabin, was impressed with Lucius's strength and bravery, and took him in as his own son. When Lucius grew to manhood, he became known for his charisma and bravery. While shorter than his fellow warriors, Lucius was stronger and doughtier than any warrior in the tribe. When Lucius was still a young man, Mabin sent him to the Dwarven city of Ozamar to negotiate an alliance. Mabin's tribe had come into conflict with the other Almari, and he needed as much help as he could get. Lucius was unable to convince the Dwarven king to aid his tribe, but fell in love with the king's daughter, Skye. Lucius and Skye fled the Dwarven realm and returned to his tribe. Skye taught Lucius the art of fighting without pain, the berserker state known as the Battle Wrath, and with it, Lucius became a renowned warrior. Lucius led his tribe to many victories, until eventually he replaced his foster father as chief of his tribe. This peace would not last. During a feast between the tribal leaders of the Almari and the Avir, the beautiful and powerful Avir chieftain Morganhana became enamored with Lucius and seduced him. Sakei learned of the truce and fled the village to return to Ozamar. When Lucius rebuffed Morganhana's offer of marriage, she left in great anger, and from that moment on, there was war between the two tribes. For 15 years, the Almari and Avar fought. During the Battle of Red Falls, a powerful young warrior from Morganhana's tribe challenged Lucius to a battle. Lucius was injured grievously, but slew the boy. Morganhana revealed that the boy was Lucius's son, conceived 15 years ago. During their tryst, she cursed Lucius as the murderer of his own kin, and the Battle of Red Falls turned against Lucius. Morganhana defeated Lucius in battle after battle until the Almari were driven to the foothills of the Frostback Mountains. There, Lucius made a last stand. In the night before Lucius's final battle, Skara came to him and offered him a dwarven suit of chain in exchange for a night together. Lucius agreed and wore the armor to the following morning in battle. The battle was fierce and bloody, and Lucius met Morganhana in personal combat. In the end, Lucius slew the warrior woman, but not before receiving a mortal wound to his heart. The chain inexplicably unable to block her final blow, Lucius died, and after the battle was done, a party of Dwarven warriors came down from the mountain and took the body of Lucius back to Ozamar. From the legend of Lucius Dwarfenson, Arthur Unrecorded, circa 350 ancient. A pinch of ashes, torn from a book on local myth and legends. The Kakari Wilds are rife with legends and myths that have amazed and confounded scholars since the fall of Ostagar in ancient times. One such mystery lies behind the tale of Ostia and Nabar, two young lovers who lived in Ostagar. The legend says that Ostia grew up in the company of Gazaroth, a spirit of the earth bound to an overhang on the bank of a lake in the Kakari Wilds. Gazaroth began to fancy her, and they spent much of their days together, talking and laughing. Over the years, however, Ostia became a woman and began to seek the company of men. When Ostia met Nuberin, the two fell in love, and Ostian hoped to bring her lover to see her spirit friend. But the spirit, angered and jealous, bade her be gone. Gazaroth told her that she would never see it again until she brought her lover's ashes and sprinkled them over their spot. Austria was horrified, and she fled from the enraged spirit, but she began to miss Gazarath, and on the day Neberin asked her to marry him, she cut her beloved's throat, burned him, and brought his ashes to Gazarath, knowing that their marriage would forever sever her ties to her dear spirit friend. There are legends among the Chazan that Gazarath still haunts that lake, and that those who sprinkle the ashes of the deceased over the right spot can summon the spirit in memory of the contract with its beloved Astaroth. Gazarath will grant a single wish and then vanish, never to be heard from again. A note is scribbled in the margin beneath the page. Marcus, I think this is real. If you take the ashes I gave you and scatter them over a pile of rocks on the overhang overlooking the half-sunken Tevinter Dome, maybe Gazarath will appear and give you a wish. If the battle takes you there, I think it's worth a try. And that, my friends, will be the end of this video. It was a nice long one, catching up on all the codex. I'm going to try to read them throughout the game because they do get a lot of information that I think is useful, but we'll see on how easy it is to keep up on them. If not, and even if I do, I feel like I'll probably keep up on the compilation of keeping them all together. Maybe have a part 2 when we get several more. You probably noticed throughout the video, I didn't read the control ones. I didn't think that that's really necessary. If you guys want them read, go ahead and comment below and I'll make a whole another video for just the control ones. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and in the next video we are gonna go and light the torch. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.